terror, dread, horror, spirals. Oddly compelling, human-shaped crevices in a mountainside. Apocalyptic zombie sea creatures with razor-sharp mechanical legs. A sentient planet with a taste for the moon. A universe full of grotesque abominations. Each story inches its way into every orifice, crawling underneath your skin. This is the horror of Junji Ito.
こんにちは、ホラー漫画家の伊藤淳二です。
An undeniable master of terror for over 35 years, still creating, evolving to this day. A relentless machine of macabre, continually churning out utterly disturbing, skin-crawling tales of dread. Junji Ito's style is distinct, instantly recognizable, and equally stomach-churning. He draws inspiration from his own fears and anxieties, manifesting them as recurrent themes in his work. Body horror, war, insects, paranoia, and the tragic depths of human nature itself. You may be familiar with some of his most famous works. Uzumaki, the tale of a seaside town that develops an unceasing obsession with spirals. Tomie, a beautiful high school girl killed and dismembered by her classmates, yet each resulting piece regenerates endless clones. Hanging Blimp, swarms of parade-sized balloons with an uncanny likeness prey upon their doppelgangers. These are but a small sample of his library of horror. In total, he has created over 22 separate publications, many of which contain dozens, if not hundreds of chapters, not to mention the over 20 different film, television, and anime adaptations over the years, with 2 more major releases on the horizon. He even famously adapted one of the most historically significant pieces of Japanese literature, Osamu Dazai's No Longer Human. The sheer volume would speak for itself, were it not for the consistently excellent quality contained therein. Ito isn't simply a factory that churns out mediocre, forgettable work. In fact, he's quite the opposite. Every story he produces is wildly imaginative and nightmarishly memorable. Whenever I conduct research for videos like this, I go for total immersion, consuming every piece of source material I can find, taking in its entirety, aiming to create the best representation in essay form. But for Junji Ito, this proved difficult. Not only is his catalog incredibly expansive, but reading through it all is exhaustingly horrifying. I found myself needing breaks often, and when I did, the thoughts and images would linger, dredging up nightmares and paranoia. His drawings are remarkably detailed and vivid, oddly mesmerizing and captivating. He manages to create this aura of unease, a pervasive skittishness in the reader, conjuring a sense of seeing something you're not meant to see. Almost all of Junji Ito's stories follow a similar pattern, at least in the beginning. They start with a young, naive protagonist, someone ordinary, regular, relatable, inhabiting a world similar to our own. And this is by design. A regular human in a normal world acts as a relatable vantage point, increasing familiarity, as well as the accompanying unease as things shift. Ito subtly entrenches the reader in his worlds. We experience the flow of slowly horrifying twists in the same manner and time as the protagonist. There is always a slow yet sure descent into chaos. Characters subtly notice that things feel off. An oddly compelling obsession, the abrupt disappearance of a friend, or perhaps a sudden, drastic change in behavior. This prompts the protagonist to investigate further and encourages the reader to guess at what's really going on. The more the characters dig, the more oddities they find. What was once an individual obsession quickly devolves into an epidemic. What was once a peculiar occurrence becomes commonplace mayhem. And then, all at once, the bucket drops. Chaos. A tipping point. The world collapses beyond comprehension. The seemingly understandable, even explainable, becomes completely unrecognizable. Something utterly mortifying. Something beyond redemption. Ito's protagonists are cursed. Cursed with fortune. Cursed with survival. Forced to carry on the story, to live long enough to see everyone they've ever cherished contort themselves into an unrecognizable mass of brutality and disgust, until they are left with nothing to look forward to but their own demise. Otherwise ordinary characters are suddenly plunged into chaos, destruction, and death, forced to pick up the pieces and find a way out of the very hell they are unwittingly thrust into. The hallmark of an Ito manga, an ending trapped in total isolation, inescapable dread, despair, loneliness, and futility. One of the oft overlooked aspects of Ito's work is their humor. Ito has spoken about how he used to write a great deal of gag manga, even turning horror stories he got tired of into comedies halfway through. His work perpetually rides the razor's edge of absurdity. This often results in chapters or entire stories that fall completely over that edge into genuinely comedic territory. Ridiculousness crashes into comedic relief, and yet just as quickly veers back into sheer dread. This meta self-awareness keeps Ito's work relatable and poignant. He reminds us that through all the terror and dread in the worst imaginable situations, there's always something darkly humorous lurking in the shadows. His short manga about daily life with his wife and cats, Yon and Mu, is a great example of his humor. It's delightfully lighthearted and genuinely hilarious, yet also distinctly Ito in its ghoulish depictions of everyday life. At the end of his collection, Voices in the Dark, Ito's afterword mentions his fondness for the title. He had hoped its image would linger with the reader, further darkening the work. I find this an apt description of not just this particular collection, but his catalog as a whole. Ito has this uncanny ability to create these graphic, fearsome depictions of unimaginably grotesque and terrifying images that stay with you long after you close the cover. Partly due to the recurrent techniques discussed earlier, but also it's simply his personal brand of horrifying genius. I'm not sure if he himself is cognizant of how he creates such twisted works, but the fact remains, he is a true visionary. Yes, much of his work draws inspiration from others, but so much more of it defies expectation, resulting in truly unique, hellish landscapes, particular to Ito. After putting down his manga, it has this tendency to linger. Without realizing it, the bizarre fascinations have slowly crept into the crevices of your mind, referencing themselves every time you see a random spiral, a garden slug, or a strangely human-shaped hole in a cliff face. This is the true power of Junji Ito's imagination. It somehow simultaneously rides the edge between absurdity and familiarity. His stories are so eerily relatable that you feel as though you yourself have lived it. Remarkable yet grotesque. Fascinating yet off-putting. The more you want to look away, the more you can't put it down. And this is exactly what makes Ito such a legendary mangaka. He has this propensity, this innate ability to shock, intrigue, and terrify at every turn. He completely disrupts the expected and ordinary, and instead creates truly one-of-a-kind, imaginative, nightmarish worlds that leave you wriggling in your seat, questioning your very sanity. A prolific career that continues to scare and terrorize 35 years on, author to works as memorable and iconic as they are grotesque, haunting, and horrifying. Junji Ito is truly a master of macabre, a legend of horror.
自分は今まで通り机に向かって書こうと思います。
I'm Tim, and these are my thoughts. Thanks for watching, and be sure to stop by the Discord for further Ito-inspired discussion. And I'll see you all in the next episode.